digitalization as a megatrend is past. And the next wave is much, much more important than just transforming an analog world into a digital world. The next big thing is what we call the end of stupidity. You know, I have this computer and I had it for quite a few years. And although I spend more time with this machine than I spend with family members or with my colleagues, and it knows everything about my life. It knows my schedule, my travel plans, my emails, the presentations I did, everything. But it hasn't come to the point where it actually is able to interpret the information that it's processing so that it can help me in my daily life. So for example, if I would be able to ask the computer, you know, we had this thing about half a year ago where somebody asked me about a specific technology. And he says, yeah, I looked at it into as well, and I even Googled it and put together some charts for you, and here's the history, and I found 2 videos on YouTube. Let's take a look at it together. That sounds like science fiction to many of us right now, but I would argue within the next 5 years, we will look at computers in a totally different way than we are looking at PCs or computers right now. The old way of programming was the if-then paradigm. People would write thousands or millions lines of code programming a machine that if something or a variable was this way, then the computer would do this and this. So we had to think ahead of everything, and the computer was not able to learn, was not able to get smarter by itself. Now this paradigm is shifting right now, and with artificial intelligence, deep learning, with the new paradigm for computers, we are looking at machines that can actually learn. So for example, if you have a robot, in just a few years ago, people would have to program everything so that this robot could stand up. Nowadays, we are putting artificial intelligence into the machine, giving the robot 2 legs, putting them on the floor and saying, I'm going home now. Tomorrow I'll see if you have learned to walk. And it will do trial and errors, just like a small child is doing when it's learning to walk. Probably falling down a few times, learning, okay, I can't do this because I'm tipping over. But actually, you can see that after a few hours or days, these machines teach themselves to walk. Now, this is a totally different paradigm from where we came from. And that is important to know when we're looking at artificial intelligence. Machines can now learn languages by reading texts and by comparing 2 languages in text or in speech. And they can teach themselves, they can learn every day. And learning used to be the domain of humans. There weren't very many intelligent systems on this world that were able to learn. And now we have competition. If you're trying to learn how to drive a car, you're on your own. You get your driver's license when you're 16 or 18, depending on where you live. And you make quite a lot of mistakes in the time that you're driving, and probably you learn, okay, I never do that again. But it takes quite a long time until you are an experienced driver. Now, when we're looking at autonomous cars, for example, and we're looking at cars that drives in fleets, we have something what we call crowd learning. And if you had 10,000 cars driving 100 kilometers every day, they experience quite a lot of different situations. Now, what they do at night is they share their information in the cloud. So they're combining what the fleet of 10,000 cars has learned in a day, and it will outperform your driving skills within a few weeks, because after a few weeks, the combined knowledge of these 10,000 cars has much more driving experience than you can gather in a lifetime. Now, this is also a part of artificial intelligence and the changes and the paradigm shifts that we're seeing in computing. And so we are arguing that we are now at a tipping point where we see accelerated change in the ways that we can apply artificial intelligence into our work and routines and daily lives. Mobility will become a service. Just like information is becoming a service. Once you have a smartphone, you have a little button for a information service on there, and you can ask the smartphone a question to get an answer. So that's information at the push of the button. Now, mobility will be the same, because once cars can drive itself, you just push the button, I want to go home now. And the car will pull up, you will see it on the phone, okay, it takes another 30 seconds, it's just around the corner. You get in there, there's no driver, but it will drive you and will take you home. And the funny thing is we calculated how much will it cost to operate such a self-driving car. And if you calculate, you don't need a driver and you're driving it electrically, so you don't have to pay for gas. We come up with something around 10 cents per mile total cost of operating a self-driving fleet of cars. Now, even if you want to gain or earn some money and you're putting, okay, the mile costs 20 cents every mile. It's still cheaper to buy, it's still cheaper to go by this than to take the bus. Because a bus ticket will probably cost you, if you're just driving 3 miles with a bus, you still pay $3 for this ride. With this service, you'd pay 60 cents. And it picks you up where you are and drops you off just where you want to go, so you don't have to go to the bus stop. So this is just a small example that artificial intelligence or digitalization or whatever you want to call it is not only changing the way that we work on a computer, but it's also changing mobility in our understanding of services in the future. I believe that digitalization is affecting basically every industry that we're looking at.
In your view, what is the impact of this on existing businesses?
Well, it is very hard to see disruptions through the eyes of the incumbent. So, if you are in the car manufacturing business for decades, you think you know how the story goes. You know, okay, people buy a car, they love it when they go to the dealership and pick up their very new car, and then you service this over time, and then after a few years, they have to buy a new one. And it used to be that way, but technology disruptions, where technology enables us to propose a totally different business model, where you have mobility at the push of a button, and you just pay as you go, changes the car industry profoundly. And I would argue that most people who live in cities and have problems finding a parking spot, who don't really care that they want to have a car sitting 23 hours a day at the roadside, if they have the ability to call a car every time they want with a push of on their smartphone, they will do that. And that will change the ability of car manufacturers to sell cars in cities. Now, cities comprise most of the world's population is already living in cities. There will be few who live, somewhere in remote areas who will still need to buy a car, but this number is getting smaller. So we see that, for example, in the mobility industry, it used to be dominated by car manufacturers, truck manufacturers. And we see this tipping point where there are new players coming in from the IT, from consumer electronics, who say, okay, we just have to build a device that is able to transport people in a convenient way. And they're disrupting an industry. And it's happening already. Computers will do routine jobs. So everything that is done the same way all over again, whether it's cleaning a industrial complex, whether it's driving a bus or a taxi, whether it's making your tax returns. That is routine. That will be artificial intelligence. What artificial intelligence will not do is being creative, being innovative, being empathic, well, to some extent, but to help companies grow, to help companies reach the next level, to improve customer experience, to come up with a new idea how to wow people. Whether it's on a strategic basis or whether it's on a day-to-day basis that you interact with people. Those jobs will still be done by humans for a long time, but more and more jobs compete with artificial intelligence. And oftentimes it's just a question of money. It's, okay, if I have a personal assistant and I pay her quite a lot of money every month just to handle my routines, she competes with a computer system that in a few years from now can do 90% of what she's doing for me today. So she has to advance to do something within the 10% this computer cannot do that will still be worth for me to employ her and pay her thousands of Swiss francs every month. So everybody is challenged to compete with artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is just another technology that mankind is inventing to make their lives easier, better, and safer, and more convenient. And I would argue there was someone a few thousand years ago who invented the wheel. And I bet there were many people who said, no, we have learned how to carry things with a stick and on our heads and everything. Nobody needs a wheel. But then they tried it out, and they found out, hey, this is great. Less work. We can go greater distances. We can even put a horse or a donkey in front of it. Great invention. And with artificial intelligence, we still have to find out how great it is. Many people look at it at the current stage and say, nah. But we've just seen the tip of the iceberg. We just see in the very, very early stages of this technology, and I believe it will change the way we view work in our society and how to manage our lives much more than the steam engine has changed our lives. And if you imagine that, before the steam engine, only 2% of people lived in cities. We had no way to have international trade. We had no means in producing enough power to have electric light or to have communication systems and stuff like that. Imagine what artificial intelligence can do if it has such a profound impact as the steam engine. It has never been easier to be curious and to learn the things that you want to learn or that you don't know yet. When I remember 20 years ago, when I saw something and I didn't know what I was looking at, it was hard to find someone who would explain it to me, or to find a book or the library where the book was placed to. Today, you can point your camera of your smartphone to it, make a picture, and the system will tell you what you see. It's never been easier to explore, to be curious. I mean, when we are born and we are young children, we are curious and we want to explore the world. And the older we get, the less curious we are. And I would say, if somebody asked me, okay, what is the number one skill that you need to have to be successful? I say, foster your curiosity. I mean, just live just like a child and try to see things not in a way that you say, I've never seen that and I don't want to see it, but try to understand what you see. And you have all the skills and we have so powerful tools at the moment to do that. And I would also argue that if we look at history, every time we had a disruption, every time we had a disruptive new technology, people were so scared and said, oh, this is going to ruin our lives. And it's never been the case. From the invention of the wheel over the invention of the steam engine and telecommunications and electric power and everything, the automobile, it has enhanced the capabilities of people. It has changed jobs. It has changed the way people live and society functions and education systems. And we are at the point again. But you will not succeed by hoping that the future will not be different than today. It's taking part of it in a small way or a big way. And I'm pretty convinced in the long run, our lives will look, if we look back in the year 2050, and we look back at 2017, people will ask, how did you ever manage to live a life like that? I mean, it's receiving 200 emails a day and having to answer it all yourself. No way.